Well, good evening. Um, tonight, tonight we're going to review a little bit of stuff that we've gone over so far. We're not doing a quiz just yet because one of the things that we've talked about is kind of how we kind of know ourselves. You understand what I'm saying? Like, because before we can effectually minister to other people, we have to know who we are. And I think a lot of times we miss that because just think about it in life. When we feel called by God, we have people that get behind that, they affirm that, and they kind of try to place us where they feel we should go, right? Y'all tracking what I'm saying? Like when you know you have a call of God on your life. I'll give you an example. It's pretty dated, but it used to be like this. Like when you felt, sometimes they would have an altar call and say, "Hey, if you feel like you're called to ministry, I want you to come down to the altar," right? And you would come down to the altar. Somebody would pray for you, and then immediately they would start mentoring you. Well, in that mentoring process, depending on the maturity of the minister that was mentoring you, a lot of times what would happen is they would try to determine what position in the church they needed filled and how well you fit into that role. So if they needed a volunteer coordinator and you were a people person, then automatically they would start leaning you towards that, right? And a lot of times that's what happens in all calibers of ministry is when you're called by God and you acknowledge that, you tell somebody about that person that's leading you will try to get you to fill a spot that they need filled. And let me ask you this, and this is for people online, this is for people in the room. How many times has that happened to you? Right? How many times has somebody plugged you into somewhere because you felt called by God and they plugged you in somewhere and all of a sudden you didn't feel like you were actually in the right spot? You tracking with me? Like you felt like you were kind of out of place. You didn't really fit. You didn't like feel excited to do that. Well, that's what we started this whole thing out with. Like first and foremost, and if you're joining us online, I would encourage you to go to the website, thepioneernetwork.org, and look under, it's in the about thing, but under ministry school content. And there's a section there where you can click on this, and it's called the Fivefold Ministry Survey. And how many of you guys have taken that? If you haven't, I just need to get you a printed copy of it. Because the first thing we need to identify when we're going to lead in ministry is we need to know our role. Because here's the thing, if I'm wired, God has wired me as an apostle, and somebody thinks that I fit better as a teacher, God can use that. God will use that. The thing is, I'm going to wind up frustrated. Like if I'm not in my role, if I'm not in my lane, I'm going to wind up frustrated because I'm going against how God's wired me. Because an apostle is out front, like they're seeing what's next. And a teacher is trying to equip and build up what's already there. It's not to say that an apostle can't teach. It's just that they're wired differently. Because if you're relegated to one certain thing in ministry that God hasn't designed you to be in, now he's gonna shape and mold that, and he's gonna be pulling those things out of you because God wants you to be well-rounded. But we got to know our role, okay? We got to know our role, and then we got to know how to deal with people along that. And that's what we talked about last week is emotional intelligence. Like we have to know what makes us tick and what ticks us off. And then we have to manage that. And as we begin to manage that, then we can identify certain things about social settings and what makes other people tick and what ticks other people off. And we can begin to manage that. It all works together because when we know our role and we know how to deal with people, ministry starts to become easy. It starts to flow. You ever heard of that term flow? Because like flow has nothing to do with Pentecostalism. It has nothing to do with a charismatic movement. Flow just means that God is moving and everything is as it should be. You understand what I'm saying? Like ministry becomes easy. You become excited about doing it. You become excited about, even if you feel bad, you still want to do it. It's not an obligation. You understand? Like this is something that flows. Like it comes out because God has poured something in. Because that's how we're designed. Like we're not designed to hold on to what God does in our life. We're designed to let it flow through. And that's really leadership. And the sooner we get that, the better life's going to be. So tonight we're going to talk about something really kind of diving deeper into us. Because what you'll notice is when you think we're going to talk about leadership, and when the name of the class is Leadership 360, you think, well, somebody's going to teach me how to just lead people. Okay? Well, that's really what this is all about. Because when Jesus taught his disciples on how to lead people, we know that the apostles of Christ are the ones that brought the gospel out. And the reason that we're actually part of the church today is because of those guys. But the way Jesus taught his disciples wasn't, hey, do this, do this, do this. You notice the pattern that Jesus used with people? He tried to dive in and pull out what was in them, right? He tried to get them to identify what was already in them and to use that for the betterment of the gospel and the furtherment of the gospel to push the good news of the gospel outward. And the only way that Jesus taught them was not do this and do this. These 12 steps will help you be a better leader or to teach you how to lead people. What he was trying to do is trying to get them to know themselves. Because so often we can get drawn into ministry and not know who we are. And what happens in that? Let me show you. Failed ministries all across the world come from that very thing. When we don't know who we are in leading, in ministry, what happens is we identify somebody else that we like in ministry and we emulate that, which there's nothing wrong with emulation. That's part of the process. But we emulate somebody else that we think is awesome. And we try to build everything in our life around that. Are you tracking with me? And we try to actually become somebody else. And we'll try to build our whole ministry like their ministry. And it fails. And you know who we blame? At the end of the day, we blame God. We blame God because something didn't succeed when we didn't take the proper steps of identifying who we are. Because you realize this, I want you to just online in this room, say your name. My name's Scott. Right? Your name is? Okay. Do you know how many of those there are? Now you might have a similar name to somebody else. But do you know that God broke the mold when he made you? Like, there's one of you, right? That seat is already taken. Like, I can't be TD Jakes. You know why? Because there's already one. Like, and you pick your favorite minister, you can't be that person because that's already taken. You have to identify who you are and how best God can flow through you to be the best you can be, because this is the thing. God made you to do a purpose that only you can do. You say, well, what if I don't accept it? Well, he'll find somebody else to do the job. But the thing is, there's going to be a hole left because you were designed perfectly to do that, to minister to those people. Have you ever noticed that there's certain people that you can reach that other people can't? That certain people open up to you that other people can't really tap into? It's because God's wired you individually to lead. Like, he's wired you individually to do what only you can do. Now, the job's going to get done whether you accept it or not. But what an awesome honor that God has created something in the universe that only you can do. That's what leadership is. And the way it starts is we got to figure out who we are. So we identify our role, right? We learn how to interact and deal with people. We know how to read rooms. We know how to change and be a thermostat, not a thermometer, right? So we can actually, by self-assessment and self-management, self-awareness and self-management, then we can be socially aware and socially managers. Like, we can actually walk into a room and change the temperature of the room. You say, well, that starts the process, but like, I really don't know who I am, right? Anybody you ever question that? Like what makes me tick? Like what drives me? Like, who am I? I want to show you tonight. We're going to talk about this one thing. It's personality. If you were to define your personality, what would you say your personality is? Somebody just give me an answer, just random.
Outgoing.
Outgoing. Anybody not feel that way? Right? So when we start to ask ourselves, what is my personality like? We're gonna start at that place, because here's how personalities are broken down. Like, am I outgoing? Am I not? Well, it comes down to this, because it doesn't matter if you take like, when we started this class, we started doing like what's called a DISC test, DISC. But you have other personality tests like Myers-Briggs, you have Enneagram tests. All are great, but all of them break down to basically four topics, right? It doesn't matter which one. Like, if you're like, I'm an Enneagram 3-8. If anybody knows what that is, that just means that I'm a kind of a questioner. Like, I like to question a lot of stuff, and I like to challenge a lot of stuff. And if you've ever been in a meeting with me, you'll know that, because that's how I'm wired. Like, I'm what you call the devil's advocate in a room, in a conversation, because I always want to question something. Like, I want to question. If you're going to tell me something, I want you to know why you're telling me that. And I'm going to dig until you can know what you're saying to me is the facts. Now I'll accept the facts, but I'm going to challenge you. Like, you're not going to tell me something just because you've been taught it your whole life. Like, you're going to have to do the research. Like, that's how I'm wired. But that's neither here nor there. Now, you can take a Myers-Briggs test. Anybody ever took one of those? Like, so there's 4 letters, and you're one of those 4 letters. Like, your 4 letters. My wife actually works for a company that the badge that she wears has her personality in Myers-Briggs on the badge. So that when you see her, you know what type of personality she is, so you can deal with them better. You understand what I'm saying? Like, she's an INFJ, and that means she's an extrovert, an ENFJ. Whatever it is, she wears her feelings on her shoulder, on her sleeve. And everybody that looks at those letters that knows about Myers-Briggs knows that she's an extrovert. Like, she's an outgoing person, like Chris was talking about. Like, that's how she's wired. But at the same time, she's very emotional. She's very bought into what she does. And people need to be sensitive to that. I wish people could wear T-shirts with their Myers-Briggs letters over there, so you would know how to deal with people better, because wouldn't that make emotional intelligence a lot easier if you knew what personality somebody was? And dating, what Chris was saying was dating would be a lot easier. That's absolutely true. I'm not going to touch on that one, but it basically boils down to these 4 things, and one of them is extroversion versus introversion. Here's the thing. You're either going to be an outgoing person or you're not, right? My wife is an extrovert. Like, she doesn't meet a stranger. Like, she talks to everybody. I'm an introvert. We're completely different. She's an E, I'm an I. Because she's an extrovert. She loves people. She loves talking to people. She's always smiling. She knows every one of our neighbors by name, has most of their phone numbers and some of their house keys. I don't even understand it. You know how I identify with my neighbor? Hi, neighbor. That's not being rude. It's just how I am. I'm an introvert. I could live next door to you for 5 years and never know your name. Doesn't mean I don't like you, because I don't associate things like that. I'm an introvert. Like, I can live next to you and love you and do anything in the world for you, but we don't have to talk, because I do enough talking in what I do. Like, in preaching and teaching, I do enough talking. So I'm cool with being an introvert, but that's one of the 4 characteristics of personality. Like, we have to know how we're wired. Because, see, some people will look at extroverts as, man, they're way over the top. And this is how introverts act. Man, they're way over the top. They're just too much. And extroverts look at introverts like, man, why don't you talk to people? Like, why do you always find a corner when we go to a party? You know, you go to the Christmas parties, you're going to find me in 1 or 2 places. I'm going to find another introvert, and I'm going to go sit on the couch in the far corner. I'm not going to be around the crowd. And my wife is going to be like making laps around the room. Like, she's going to know everything about everybody before we leave. And I'm going to be sitting in one little piece of the corner talking to somebody that's just like I am. It's just the way things are. You have to know you. And that's part of your personality. It's not wrong or right either way, but you're either going to be outgoing or you're not. But don't think you're wrong just because you're different from somebody else. You're absolutely who God created you to be. You understand that, right? All right, so the next one is this. Sensing versus intuition. What does that even mean? Well, here's the thing, and a lot of this would come from Myers-Briggs, but it also relates to any other personality test. Do you sense things, or are you intuitive? Here's the deal. Do you read the situation, or do you read into the situation? You tracking what I'm saying? Let me give you an example. Social media is amazing, but text messages, conversations, same situation. Somebody says something to you, they say what they say, right? How many of you read into what they say? Well, you said this, but I know this is what you meant. Like, all of a sudden you can read minds. And how many times have we been wrong in doing that? Right? So sensing is getting a read off of actually what happened, right? Intuition is saying that you can see deeper into the situation. Are you right? Are you wrong? Doesn't matter. Because when you read into something, it means the same thing to you, right? They might not have meant what you thought they meant, but you thought they meant it. And unless you have a conversation with them about it, that intuition thing. But let me put a different spin on this. How many of you act in discernment? This is a biblical term. Like you can see something and you know something's off, and you don't know what it is that's off, but you know something's off. See, that's not sensing, that's intuition. That's a gift from God. Now, here's the thing. Just because you act in discernment don't mean that every time you read something on Facebook that what you think they meant is what you think. You understand what I'm saying? There has to be a balance of sensing and intuition, because intuition is actually a gift from God called discernment. And really, that works best face to face. See, discernment is hard to distinguish between you and a computer screen, you and a phone screen. You understand what I'm saying to you? Because this should be helpful. Like there are some things that we can't discern through this. But when you get face to face with somebody, because here's the thing, intuition goes out the door with this. Doesn't matter if it's social media, doesn't matter if it's text message, doesn't matter if it's email. Intuition goes out the door. Relationship creates discernment. Because if I know you, and if something's off with you, God can give me the ability to sense that, and we can talk about it then. You see what I'm saying? But you got to know how you're wired. Like, because some people, like, I can read text messages, they can be in all caps. And the way I read it is it said what it said. Like, I don't try to read into it. I just read it. And it said what it said. Now, they could have meant something really bad. And until I talk to them face to face, I'm just going to read what was there. Because sensing is how I operate. I don't operate a lot into intuition, because sensing is how I'm wired, my personality. The next one is this. Thinking versus feeling. Now, I'm not even going to ask you. See, this is another one that me and my wife are completely different on. I think, she feels. And here's the deal. Neither one of us are wrong, but she feels, and she feels deeply. Like, I'm thinking about a situation. Like, and that can be a bad thing and it can be a good thing, because I can think too much into a situation and give myself an ulcer. My wife just feels it. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you hurt her feelings, you've hurt her feelings. And I'm thinking about, like, why she feels this way. At the same time, she's like, you don't understand. Like, my world is crumbling right now because she's feeling it. So you're a thinker or a feeler. You understand what I'm saying? Like, these are these letters, and these are easy ways to distinguish personalities. Are you a thinker or are you a feeler? Anybody can y'all identify with any of this stuff we're talking about? Like, personally, because this is the way we're supposed to be, like, looking at this whole situation is, am I really processing how I'm wired? The next one is this. This is a big one. Judging versus perceiving. This is kind of where we can get into sin in, like, a major way. Because how many of us will rush to judge a situation versus just processing the information? Can I give you an example? And anybody that's watching online, just forgive me. I'm not going to say any names. I had a friend recently, and this is why I think social media is so damning in certain situations. Like, you should have informed opinions about everything, right? Outside your feelings, you should have an informed opinion about politics, about life, about religion, about everything. You should have one. You have to know when and when not to share that. Are you tracking with me? Okay, I had a friend went through a really bad spell. And he and his wife were, like, really going through it. And here's what happened. They decided individually to post everything on Facebook in real time. You understand what I'm saying? There's a difference. Like, this is really happening in real time, major problems, and we decided to post it to everybody. Well, here's the deal. The majority of the people I know, their personalities came out in that situation. Even me. You know why I'm a J? Because I judge. Because what I would do, there was just information out there to some people. People that perceive, that was just information out there. What I did is I went ahead and judged the whole situation in my mind. Now, I didn't share it with a lot of people because, number one, I didn't think that should have been the place for that. You understand? Like, social media is not the place for family trauma and arguments. But I went ahead and judged the situation. Oh God, it's bad. You know, I'm reading into it. I've already painted a picture that I think is the accurate picture. 2 weeks later, everybody's back together, everything's all good. Only problem is, this is the thing with live streaming, this is the thing with the internet, it's always there. You understand what I'm saying? And this is the reason that I think some of this is really bad, is because at some point, someday, like a memory is going to pop up on somebody's timeline of that crap. Like one of the spouses is going to get a timeline memory and it's going to pop up and it's going to be one of those posts, because it's always going to be there. Like you can't get rid of it. It's there. It's just like any sermon that you would ever preach. Like you realize that once it's online, it's there. And the problem with this is that we mature and grow up. So like sermons that I preached 12, 15 years ago, I wish I could take back. Like I wish they weren't there, but they are. And we have to be mindful of that, because we're set to either perceive information or to judge. Now I'm going to wind this down, because there's 4 things that we're going to talk about. And before we start the class tonight, and if you're online, you can go to that same page, Ministry School Content, and you'll see something called under Leadership 360 called personality assessment or personality test. It's a 5-minute test, and guys, ladies, take this week. Don't try to figure anything out. Just take it, because there's these 4 quadrants that we've talked about tonight, which is Myers-Briggs. All this is covered in Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, DISC test, all of it. Basically breaks down into 4 simple things. You're one of 4 animals. And you're like, that's not even making sense. It will next week, because my wife's going to be teaching next week, and she goes through this. This is probably, her class is probably my favorite out of the whole shindig, because her personality comes out. You get to experience like the full-on Meg, because one of her passions is personality assessment. And the best way to get to know yourself is to know which animal you are. So we're going to talk about these 4 animals tonight really quick. I want you to take this test home, take it, bring it back with you next week. Or if you're watching online, I want you to download that, take the test, and let us know what animal you are. The first animal is this, the lion. And I guess you can kind of figure this one out, right? It doesn't matter if you're taking an Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or DISC test. You'll identify with this person, the lion. But what do lions do? They do lion stuff. Like, they don't care about anything else, because they just go about doing lion stuff. Like, lions are large and in charge, and they will eat you. Like, literally eat you. And you've met leaders like this, right? You ever met anybody that's like so driven that they will run you over to accomplish what they're trying to do? That's a lion. You know what a lion does? The job. Like, they're going to get it done. And it don't matter how many bodies are left in the wake, they're going to handle business, because lions do lion stuff. Like, it's just like sharks. Sharks ain't studying anything else. They're just going around doing shark stuff. Lions just do lion stuff. They're just going around eating stuff, taking charge, and they're going to handle business at the end of the day. The second one is this. It's the otter. Now, you're going to meet an otter. You've already met an otter tonight. You can see her in the back dancing. You know what an otter is, right? I saw this on a talk show today or a game show. Otters are like these little precious little sea creatures that are all about attention. Like they're always happy. They're cute. They're snuggly. I mean, it's just otters just make you happy being around them. You know what I'm talking about? They're like between a sea lion and a what? Yeah, they're just kind of like if you crossed like a beaver and a sea lion, you would get an otter, and they're always like clapping their little fins and like it's amazing because they're so cute, but they need to be seen. You understand what I'm saying? Like an otter is always going to light up the room. They're going to make people happy. But the thing is, if people aren't happy around them, it kind of bums them out. You ever met anybody that always you have to give them a pat on the back? You know, when they do something good, you've got to affirm them. Like you've got to say, man, that was a good job. Because if you don't say that, if you don't say that was a great job, then what they're going to do is they're going to go internal and they're going to think the opposite. They're going to think since you didn't tell them good job that they did a bad job, and then it's going to be just like, whoa. Well, that's an otter. And you can look. I encourage you, like, do some research. Like, look this stuff up because these otters are amazing, and otters help gather everybody together. You know who makes a great worship leader? An otter. An otter personality type. Because what they do is they rally everybody together. And they want to see everybody on the same page, excited to do the same thing. Y'all tracking with me? All right. Have you guys identified, like, because I know some of you, like, all the guys are like, I'm a lion. You're going to be surprised. But because everybody wants to be a lion, but not everybody can be a lion. You know why? Because the lions will eat you. That's the truth. But then you have other people that are like otters. They're always trying to hype up a room. They're trying to bring happiness and joy to other people. They're always extroverts. But then you have this third personality type. And this is probably my favorite, the golden retriever. Y'all dog people, cat people. Please don't say you're cat people. Dog people are my friends. But golden retrievers are loyal. They're steady. They're not outgoing. They don't need accolades. Like golden retrievers are going to be there. Like we have 2 dogs that are not golden retrievers. I have 1 dog that acts like a hamster on crack, and another dog that just wants to love all the time. But neither one of them are golden retrievers because they're not middle of the road. Like they're either all this or all this. Golden retrievers are the middle of the road. Like golden retrievers are loyal. They're going to be there. They're going to show up. Like you can count on them. But don't ever run over them. You understand what I'm saying? Like just because you're a loyal person, just because you show up on time, just because you're faithful to people, doesn't mean you're a doormat. Because golden retrievers are steady. Like they're going to be there. They're going to be there today. They're going to be there tomorrow. An otter's going to be there today. And tomorrow, it just depends on what mood they're in. A lion, it just depends on where the food is. But a golden retriever is always going to be there. They're going to be steady. You're going to go a lot more into detail on this stuff next week. But the last one is this. I just want us to try to identify who we are. The last one is this. This is the beaver. And I guess you already kind of know because the person in the back of the room that was dancing and doing the otter stuff is also a beaver. Because beavers are this. They're methodical. Like, how many of you, and you online, how many of you would start their day off with a to-do list? Right? You start your day off, you have a list of things that you need to accomplish, and as you accomplish them, you check it off and you move on. Okay, that's a beaver, right? Because everything is linear with a beaver. Like, because you don't skip to number 3 until you knock number 2 out. Because if you skip to number 3 before you knock number 2 out, the dam is going to burst. You understand what I'm saying? So beavers are very methodical on how they do stuff. They need lists. They will send you emails with a gazillion different topics, and each topic has an article with it. And you understand what I'm saying? But I'm going to tell you what. If you don't recognize that all these animals are necessary for leadership, because let's go through it. Again, we're going to tie it into the fivefold ministry. A lion is going to be an apostle or a prophet. Maybe an evangelist. Probably not so much an evangelist, but an apostle or a prophet. That's kind of how this rolls out, because they're getting stuff done. And the sad thing about a lion is a lion's going to leave some bodies in the way. An otter is probably going to be an evangelist, because an otter is going to be recruiting people to the cause. Come on, let's join up. Let's get it going. A golden retriever is going to make a great pastor, because what does a pastor do? A pastor cares for people. A pastor, it doesn't bother a pastor to get in his car at 2 o'clock in the morning, drive to somebody's house and sit and talk to them for 2 or 3 hours. But a beaver is going to be a teacher. Like, they don't want to just check off the list. They want to teach you to check off the list. You understand what I'm saying? So all this works together to form the body of Christ. And that's what we're here for. We got to know ourselves. So what you need to do tonight is to take this thing home, take it, and you'll have a little bit of information to know kind of where you land. And then next week, Meg's going to rock you guys' world with personality assessment. Is that cool? I'm going to pray and we'll be finished tonight. God, thank you for everybody watching online. Thank you for everybody in this room. Just thank you for the opportunity that we've been given to be your people, to represent you to the world. I just pray blessings on everybody under the sound of my voice. In Jesus' name, amen.